LTF literally like laid the foundation for my business. It's called that for a reason. Like if my business were a house, without LTF, I would have some of like the fixtures and a few pieces of furniture and maybe even a floor plan, but I would not know what goes in each room or why or how. And my house wouldn't even be standing because there would be no foundation.
If you're a jewelry business startup and you want to get investors in your jewelry business, there are a lot of things that you have to think about. First of all, you have to know your numbers. You need to have a plan and you need to know exactly where you're going if you want someone to actually support you in that way. But most jewelry business owners are just looking for someone to invest in their business. And what I really think that they should be doing is thinking outside of the box and how they can get investment capital in their business, because it might look a little bit different than you think. That's why I have an amazing episode today on this podcast, and I'm interviewing the most recent Halstead Grant winner, Stephanie Howell, who just won $7,500 to invest in her jewelry business. Before we dive into that, let me introduce myself. I'm Tracy Matthews. I'm the Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy and the host of the Thrive by Design podcast. And I support jewelry business owners and help them launch, grow, and scale successful multiple six, and seven-figure businesses using my methodology called the Desired Brand Effect. And today I interview student Stephanie Howell, who took our Laying the Foundation program many years ago and was persistent and consistent in building her business with her strategy, her marketing, her planning, and got all of her ducks in a row and practice what we preach over here at Flourish and Thrive Academy to win a $7,500 grant for her jewelry company. So we're gonna dive into that episode shortly. You can learn a lot about how Stephanie prepared for this grant, about how she did the work and kept applying even if she didn't get it, and also some of the things that you can do if you want to get investment capital or grant money in your business. So it's a great episode. Before we dive into this episode, I wanna make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Also, if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you turn that little notification bell on and share your experience of the episode or comment below after you listen to this episode. Let's dive in to this episode with Stephanie Howell. I'm so excited to be here with one of our students, Stephanie Howell, who just won the Halstead Grant. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. This has been like a really amazing experience. You've been in our community for a while, I think now, and we've been, proud supporters of the Halstead Grants for many, many years. I would have Hillary on the podcast talking about the grant, and you joined our TYC program and you announced like really early on in the program that you had won the grant. And I was like confused because usually they pick the winner in August. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, they totally changed it. So the deadline this year was May 1st, and they announced it in June instead of the August 1st deadline and announcing in September.
I actually kind of like that for some reason. It feels like I don't know, summer's hard to like deal with that kind of stuff.
It was really helpful because winter is kind of my slow time. And so I got to work on the application during a slower period rather than like in art fair, like hustle season.
Yeah. Are you really busy in the summer? Is that like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Busiest time of the year. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to dive into all of that, but more than anything, congratulations on winning this grant.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your journey into jewelry design.
Yeah. So I took a jewelry class my very first semester of college, and I was just enthralled. I ended up majoring in studio art with a concentration in jewelry and metalsmithing. And after college, I spent some time traveling, worked seasonal jobs in the Tetons and Colorado, and spent a summer in Europe and lived in Washington State with my now husband. But as I was approaching 30, I knew I wanted to settle into one of my creative passions instead of continue working in restaurants just to fuel adventures, which was great, but time to pivot. So starting a jewelry business by far checked the most boxes. I love the tactile process of making something out of nothing and how personal of an art form jewelry is. Plus, I feel equally left and right brained and knew it would give me the opportunity to satiate like multiple parts of my brain and have that like business side and creative side kind of working together.
That's amazing. And it sounds like freedom might be a core value of yours because you like to have adventures and stuff like that and flexibility. So a jewelry business can offer that because if you set it up the right way, I would say.
Well, and that was something you always talked about in the beginning of my journey, right? Is kind of like setting your business up in a way that works for you. And time is like my most valuable resource. And so to be able to structure my business in a way that allows me the time I want and need to experience life is really important.
I know in the pre-interview, we're talking about this sort of indirectly about how the motivation for everyone starting a business is different. Like some people care about money, some people care about flexibility, some people care about where they're spending their time or what being an entrepreneur provides from them. So everyone's got their different basically story or identity or vision of what success looks like. And it has always been super important to me to help designers see that it's not just about making money or these other things. It's about setting up a business that supports all the things that you want to create in your life, which is so
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And finding the balance between all of those. Like, of
Yeah.
course, I want financial freedom. Of course, I want all of those pieces you touched on. But yeah, time is probably one of my biggest values.
That's amazing. So why'd you decide to apply for the Halstead Grant?
So I actually first learned about the Halstead Grant through your podcast when you interviewed Kristen Baird. It
Yeah.
was the fall of
That was a while ago.
2017, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sidebar, your podcast was my very first resource for jewelry business education. So I had decided I wanted to start a jewelry business, but I didn't even have a studio set up at the time. So over a 6-month period, my husband renovated our like just carport garage into this now studio that I'm in.
Beautiful. It's so clean.
Yeah. I like a tidy space. But yeah, during that time, I knew I needed to learn everything I could about the business side of things because I had none of that knowledge at all.
Yeah.
So I literally Googled podcasts about jewelry business and your podcast came up. So I was like super surprised to find a resource that looked super promising. And I remember when I first started listening, you were talking about things that would now seem really reasonable to understand, but it was like you were speaking a foreign language. I was like, I don't know what any of this means. So anyways, after hearing the interview with Kristen, I went straight to Halstead's website and downloaded an application. I had no intentions of submitting one right away. I didn't even have any jewelry yet. But after hearing Kristen talk about it and how simply going through the process helped her understand her business and know the back end of things, I knew that if I wanted to have a successful business, I needed to know how to answer the questions on that application. So I naively made my way through the application, and looking back on that first attempt is both comical and a source of pride about how far I've come, because there's questions about sales goals and production capacity. And to embarrass myself for a minute, I was hoping by my 3rd year in business, when I filled out this application in 2017, before knowing anything, I was hoping by my 3rd year in business, I would generate $20,000 in revenue. I was clueless, right? That's nothing. So anyways, after educating myself through laying the foundation, which I'm sure we'll get to, and then taking time to refresh my skills in the studio, because I hadn't really made jewelry much since college, and I had to build a collection, and I finally launched in June of 2019. So I applied that year, my very first year of business. I was in business for a few months before I applied, and I placed in the top 5. It was because of LTF.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got the chills. Thank you.
Yeah. I applied the following year and placed in the top 5 again. And back then you could apply 3 times in your first 3 years of business. And then they changed it to you could apply 3 times in your first 5 years of business.
Okay.
So I decided to wait until I was a little further along to have a better chance before applying this year and winning.
So it's so exciting that you won this grant, and you applied a couple of times, which is cool. And on your 3rd try, this was the make it or break it moment. So what did you do to prepare this time to apply for the grant that you hadn't done the last time? And is there anything else that you want to share about that process?
Yeah. So I'm going to actually take it back a little further to
Sure.
when I applied the first time, because it all is cumulative, right? And all of the information that I included in the grant stems back to laying the foundation, right? And so that was the very first thing I did before starting my business, before applying. The first thing was laying the foundation. I'm a resourceful person, and I'm sure I would have found other resources out there over time. But man, LTF had everything I needed all in one place. And not only was it giving me the information I needed, but it was giving me the support. So the other members in LTF and you and the coaches. And I remember everyone sharing photos of their jewelry, and I didn't even have any photos of my jewelry to share yet. I didn't have jewelry. I didn't have a studio. But so yeah, I had all this time to pour into LTF. And yeah, there's no way I would have placed top 5 in my very first year of business without it. I love, love, love LTF. Anyways, So each time I applied, Halstead gave me a feedback report, which was invaluable. And it showed me
Oh,
areas
wow.
that I needed to work on and which areas I was on track with. And I used all sorts of resources to continue learning. So your podcast and business and inspirational books you recommended, like Start with Why and Profit
Mhm.
First, and Everything is Figure Outable. I connected with several Halstead winners and finalists and asked them questions and like, thank you, Instagram, for making
I
connections really
know.
easy. I used the Halstead blog and all of their wonderful resources, worked with a score mentor. And then to stay organized, I had a Halstead Grant note in just like the Apple Notes app with
Yeah.
subfolders for each question. And this was ongoing for years, right? Because I had
Yeah.
applied multiple times. And
You're
so
very
every time
organized.
I'm very organized. Yeah. So every time I thought of something like in the middle of the night or working in the studio, I would just have a quick and easy way to document it and
Mhm.
store the idea for later. And like I could post links to relevant resources in each note about each question. I was kind of determined to win. Like ever since
Yeah.
hearing your interview with Kristen, I had the thought like someday I'm going to win. I'm going to be the Halstead Grant winner, which sounds like a little bit arrogant, but I was like determined to grow to the point of like being able to win. And obviously I didn't know if it was possible, but I really wanted it. And I still have a ton to learn and there's a lot of growth to be had, but the recognition from Halstead is validation that I'm on the right track for sure.
So fantastic. I wanted to ask you, what were some of the key pieces of feedback that they gave you that you found most valuable?
So they were really impressed with my numbers section. I guess that's an area that a lot of people
Mhm.
struggle with. So you're looking at like production capacity and sales goals and all of the numbers and your, break even
Mhm.
point and all of these things that take time to really like sit with and crunch numbers. And
Mhm.
so that was a key thing. They were really impressed with my marketing, all of the different things that basically all of that I learned from you
Mhm.
guys.
How did applying for this grant get you thinking deeper about your business? Like, what were some of the things that you were kind of surprised at that you had to look at?
So by my third time applying, I had already thought about like each one of the questions from every angle possible. And I felt pretty confident answering the questions about like my pricing strategy and skills and direct competition and target audience. Thank you, dream client work. The financial questions are trickier. But the most difficult question for me was by far and still is outlining a 3-year timeline for my business,
Mhm.
including like steps to take, purchases and investments to make, and goals to achieve. Broke this down into categories like marketing and sales revenue and distribution,
Mhm.
business skills, etc. I think I had like 8 different categories with the action steps, purchases, and goals for all 3 years. So that question took a substantial amount of time, and I know it's going to evolve and shift as I
Yeah.
move forward, and I'll like make changes to it and remove things that no longer serve me and whatever. But it was really helpful in looking at the bigger picture and determining how I might get to where I want to be.
That's so great. It sounds like that when you fill out this application, it's probably like 20 pages or something.
Yeah, they actually started putting a limit on how many pages you could submit because I think people were writing too much and they
It's
want it
hard
to
to
be
review.
concise, right?
Yeah.
Like judges have to read so many pages. Yeah, so it has to be concise. The question section has to be like a maximum of maybe 20 pages. I would have to look at the form, but yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned laying the foundation. You've taken laying the foundation in our TYC program, and you reference LTF preparing you a lot. Like, how do you think that laying the foundation really set you up for success with the
Yeah,
Halstead?
I feel like I've already like bragged some
I
about
know.
you guys for sure, and I just want people to know who are listening to this that you did not ask me to say these things.
No.
I am just a true fan because of what you've done for me. Like my business would not exist without you guys. I don't know where I would be without Flourish and Thrive Academy. So thank you for bringing it into existence. Like I'd have found a way, but LTF expedited the process and taught me how to identify my dream client and how to create a brand story and have calls to action and how to use them and not use them and how to create line sheets and price my work and mindset work and even like how to build a cohesive collection. I had never built a collection before, just like one-off pieces. Yeah, so a huge advocate for LTF.
I love that. When did you sign up for LTF the first time?
It was winter of 2018, I believe.
2018. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit ago. You took some time to get your business off the ground.
Yeah.
And So you didn't really have a business, and it hasn't really didn't necessarily really change. You started it, but how has it evolved since taking LTF? And like, what do you think attributes to that or
Yeah,
contribute?
LTF literally like laid the foundation for my business. It's called that for a reason. Like if my business were a house, without LTF, I would have some of like the fixtures and a few pieces of furniture and maybe even a floor plan, but I would not know what goes in each room or why or how. And my house wouldn't even be standing because there would be no foundation, right? So like I'm kind of an odd case, like you said, because there was no S Howell Studios prior to LTF. Like there's no way to measure how it impacted my business because my entire business was structured on what I learned in LTF before I even launched.
And I can't keep saying this, but you are very organized. Like, I don't know a lot of artists who are organized, and I feel like maybe you have that organization gene, but also like it seems like you've organized like the building of your business too in a way where it's like super manageable. Like you don't seem overwhelmed at all by anything.
Oh, I get overwhelmed
Okay.
for sure. I am very organized though. And that comes, I don't know if that's genetic or what, but it also comes from my husband and my grandparents. So I've
That's
had
awesome.
models for organization. Yeah.
Amazing. So what pieces of advice would you give someone who is trying to apply and win a grant for their business?
I think first and foremost, just find the education you need, like whatever that
Mhm.
looks like to you. There's so many resources out there, but like if you don't want to find all of that info on your own and want support along the way, like clearly I highly recommend any of the Flourish and Thrive programs. Instagram and art fairs have connected me to so many jeweler friends, and I've recommended LTF to so many of them. And or I'll get messages from people I don't even know who know I've taken your programs, probably because I've mentioned it on Instagram or something. And so then they like message me and ask my thoughts about it. And it's always like, yes, Flourish and Thrive is legit, right? Because you see ads all the time and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know, is this trustworthy? I don't know. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, yep, trustworthy. And taking one of their programs will change your life. So that's my number one advice. Educate yourself, get the support you need. And then my second tip is just to stay organized. Like give yourself more time than you think you'll need. You'll be glad you did. Like you don't want
Yeah.
to be working on it last minute. And yeah, there's countless organization and notes apps out there. So whatever works for you, just like put everything, like write everything down as you think about it, even if you're not actively working on it.
I love the idea of organizing your thoughts inside of the iPhone Notes app. I use that all the time. Like I'm writing all my
Yeah.
social posts in there because I'm like, I think of an idea and I'm like, oh, I got to document this right now. There's so many things I probably haven't looked at in there, but like you
Oh,
can get it out
same.
of your head. And then, you have a reference tool. If you have a keyword that you can search for, you can find the note, or just have
Absolutely.
it in
I
a
couldn't live
folder.
without it.
I know it's like, that actually is like probably the most used resource that I use of anything, just like
Yeah.
you.
Same. And it's such a simple thing. Like I don't need anything fancy. Just give me a notes app.
So I have one more question about laying the foundation, and then I want to ask you how you're going to use the investment. But what would you say to someone who's like on the fence about it, who's concerned about the investment or the time commitment, or maybe wondering if it's right for them? What would you say to them?
Okay, so if you're wondering if it's right for you, I would say like just talk to you guys, right? Talk
Yeah.
to someone at Flourish and Thrive because they're going to know if it's a right fit for where you're at in business. If you're concerned about the money, like I get it. I had really low funds when I was first starting my business, but I knew that if I didn't have the education, it was going to take me like 10 times as long to
Hmm.
to even like be an actual business. So if you're worried about the money, you're gonna make it back super quickly. Like the program is gonna pay for itself and you need this information. So yeah, just take the plunge. Like it's worth it, I promise.
That's awesome. Okay, so everyone wants to know, or I just want to know maybe, but how are you going to use that investment? What are you going to invest in?
Yeah, so I'm using slash have already used the grant for 3 primary investments, and I'm excited to tell you the first one because I don't think you know. So the funds paid for TYC.
Oh, really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that's so great.
yeah.
You already joined
So
the program before.
I had joined the program that I was gonna do like the monthly payments or
Mhm.
whatever, and yeah, so the grant paid off TYC
Oh, that's
to further
amazing.
my jewelry business education. And then I also used it towards an ad in a beautifully curated local publication that gets in front of my dream client. and I will be getting a new computer to keep up with all of the demands of business. And yeah, mine's a
That's
little
smart.
outdated, so I need a new one. And then in addition to the monetary award, I received a $1,000 gift card to Halstead, which is an amazing small business. And all of you
Yes.
listening should check them out for your
Halstead's
jewelry
amazing.
supplies. I got a personalized feedback report about my business, press and recognition in the industry. And I will be going to Prescott this winter to meet the Halstead team and teach
Oh,
a jewelry
that's
class.
awesome.
So
Let
yeah,
me
it's
know
not
when,
just the financial award,
yeah,
right? Like there's so many components to the recognition, and just yeah, the recognition alone is huge because it validates that, like, okay, I'm on the right track and I believe in myself a little bit. Like I was already confident, but I believe in myself more now that professionals in the industry believe in me.
that's amazing. You're going to have to let me know when you're in town and maybe I'll meet you in Sedona
Oh, I
for
would
an event.
love that. Yes, please.
And where can everyone find your website?
I am at showellstudios.com and on Instagram and Facebook at S Howell Studios.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's been amazing to talk to you after like all these years of learning from you and and hearing your podcast so much. Like being one of the ones that you're interviewing is kind of weird, right? Like, wow, where have the last 5 years gone? But yeah, thank you.
So amazing. You're welcome. Thanks so much for watching the show today. I had a great time interviewing Stephanie. And if you are someone who'd like to get your business prepared for investors, I would love to introduce you to our Laying the Foundation program. It's our 12-week virtual program that's designed to help you set a strong foundation and help you get more exposure and sales for your jewelry business. If you'd like to learn more, head on over to flourishthriveacademy.com/LTF and check out the entire program there.